Breaking news, you guys. It's Monday morning, and Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense, just made an utter fool of himself and the American people by addressing us as if we are morons and don't see how illegal and dangerous the war that President Trump and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has launched us into. As you know, early Saturday morning, the United States and Israel began to strike Iran. Donald Trump immediately said, "This is war." And as you know, he has absolutely no authority to declare war without congressional approval. This is where we are. And they are calling this operation here in the United States Operation Epic Fury. But several people simultaneously on Saturday renamed it Operation Epstein Fury because, because Donald Trump had absolutely no reason at this moment to launch this war of choice against Iran. Discussions about their future nuclear capabilities were underway. As you might remember, in June, just this past June, Donald Trump had the U.S. military strike against Iran's nuclear facilities, and he claimed that they were destroyed. The only reason for this now is to both change the subject regarding this credible allegation that he raped a 13 or 14-year-old girl back in the 1980s. Credible. Records have been partially released, and 3 FBI interviews are being held back. This is the perfect timing for him to try to change that subject. And it is, of course, and I'm very careful to say this, not lost on the Iranian people, this Operation Epstein Fury and its timing. Now, let me just tell you, it is insane what Pete Hegseth was saying this morning. Okay? This is our Secretary of Defense. And let me quote him for you. He said, "We didn't start this war, but we will finish it." We didn't start this war? What in the name of George Orwell is he talking about? I mean, this is a very loose definition of war if he thinks that war is defined as a country, a foreign country, or a foreign leader who is incredibly dangerous and toxic. I am not defending the now deceased Ayatollah Khamenei. Absolutely not. And yet, having an authoritarian, dangerous leader in the world with nuclear ambitions is not a war. It's not a war. And let me just add, there has been a war going on, a war of aggression by Russia against Ukraine. Can you imagine if the US decided to bomb Russia? Now, of course, Russia, has nuclear weapons, so perhaps we are afraid to do this. Have we not made the case for why Iran might need them as well? But at any rate, utter nonsense to say we didn't start this war. We literally started this war Saturday morning. And you know how I know that? Because Donald Trump went on television, put out a pre-recorded video saying this was war. Okay, and that we had started it. Now, I want to add, what deeply also offended me was Pete Hegseth when he's reading his remarks with his newscaster or his Fox News voice, acting as if the words he is saying are true because someone put them on the teleprompter. He said this: "We are hitting them surgically, overwhelmingly, and unapologetically." Really? The New York Times just confirmed that one of the very first bombings, and you probably know this, was of a girls' school in Iran, a girls' elementary school, and 175 girls and teachers were killed immediately. This was Saturday morning around 9 a.m. because this is when the bombing started. It was 9:45 a.m. in Tehran time. And as soon as people there knew that the strikes were incoming, school was canceled. And by the way, Saturday is a school day in Iran. So parents had not yet gotten there to pick up their children, but they were on their way and they arrived to a horrific scene. And I'm sorry, but this is going to be upsetting. I've turned the volume down so the wailing and screaming of witnesses, of children, of parents are not overwhelming along with this video. So this would be a time, if you don't want to see this, to step away. Okay, here we go. This is, again, a girls' school that was bombed almost immediately at the beginning of the war, Saturday morning in Tehran. 175 killed. The New York Times confirmed that. Here we go. Okay, you can see destroyed. And I have one more thing. Here is a video, people reaching into the rubble, backpacks covered in blood. Now, this is where you might want to turn away. What you are going to see here, and I am offering it to you because it's important that you see when Pete Hegseth says, we are hitting them surgically, overwhelmingly, and unapologetically. In fact, we are hitting them sloppily. We are hitting them haphazardly. And we should fucking apologize for this. So again, this is someone digging through the rubble and you are going to see a severed limb. And this is not meant to exploit the death of these girls. It's meant for you to see what this war is in our name. Let us play this. And by the way, okay, let me just play this for a second. Okay, those are the backpacks. Now, this is the more very disturbing. This is a man reaching into the rubble. They are looking to rescue children. But when you go into a rescue mission, when the US and or Israel has dropped a bomb on a girls' elementary school, girls studying, you are going to not just find maybe children who are still alive, but you are going to find limbs. Okay, so look away if you don't want to see this. But if you look away, protect yourself. If you look, understand that this is what we have done and we should apologize. Okay, I can't look at that. Okay, this is what war is. This is war. Now, there are people who are trying to launder this and claim, oh, this school was once used for the military, or it is near a military site. Okay, this school has been in operation for decades. Let me show you, or for, I shouldn't say decades, I don't know how long, but I'm understanding it's a long time. And let me show you the map here. This is, you're seeing this on the right is you're sort of seeing where this is on a map. This is sort of, if you see Iran up in the right, where that little square is, toward the bottom here, where that square is in the Persian Gulf. Now, the place that was hit, you can see there is a girls' school. It was hit. There's also a naval base, but these are not buildings that should have been confused. This is not a surgical strike. This girls' school had bright color designs painted on the outside. If this administration prioritized the lives of girls and women, they would not have struck this school. They just don't fucking care. To be careful. Facts. 175 killed. And let's remember there are 1,000 victims of Jeffrey Epstein who are waiting for justice. None of them does the administration want to interview. Okay? Now, it is not, as I said, just me or just Americans saying this. I want to share with you a professor from Iran who was interviewed and was asked about this war and his views here. And he does mention the Epstein situation. So no, don't worry that talking about this is centering our own issues and ignoring the plight of the people in Iran who have already suffered under the Ayatollah. And supposedly, one of the stories is we are attacking, decapitating their leadership so that they can now be liberated. Well, we heard that same bullshit in Venezuela. In Venezuela, supposedly, we were helping the people of Venezuela because they were treated incredibly, which is true, poorly by Maduro. But we just elevated Maduro's second in charge and done nothing for the people. This is not about the people of Iran, nor is it about the people of Venezuela. And it's not entirely about nuclear weapons. This is about oil. It is. And it's about Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu wanting to be at war so they don't lose power. And it's about trying to change the subject. Because remember, Epstein doesn't just implicate Donald Trump. He implicates the Epstein files, also implicate former Prime Minister Ehud Barak, who is accused of brutally raping and trying to strangle Virginia Giuffre. Okay, let me play this for you.
This going, is there an off-ramp for Iran?
Okay, remember, I'm going to get in this shot. The guy in the center with the dark suit is a professor, Iranian professor. And he is just asked here, and this is Al Jazeera. Okay, so keep all that in mind. He's asked, is there an off-ramp?
I think what will happen is that even if the United States is able to kill illegally Iranian leaders, the next generation of Iranians, the Iranians that did not see American atrocities in Iran before 1979, some Iranians that did not understand why their parents and grandparents were anti-American, those Iranians will take over. Now they understand why American government is an imperialist, vicious government and a government that attacks other countries and kills little children. They understand they're fighting the Epstein class that either rape little girls or bomb little girls.
They are fighting the Epstein class that either rape little girls or bomb little girls. That's what he said. That's what he said.
This is the government that we are witnessing. They're going to fight back against that government, and they're going to ensure that the Islamic Republic of Iran will live many years after America destroys itself.
Okay. America, we're not going to destroy ourselves. We need to get rid of this guy. This is an incredibly unpopular war. It was before, and it is now. Now, I know that I mentioned Pete Hegseth, and so I want to return back to that and then give you something that I found so useful, which is Ali Velshi over the weekend, giving some historical context all the way back to the early 1900s. But it's really, really good about, trust me, you're not going to be bored about what the hell is going on here. Now, let me add, when Pete Hegseth was off script, when he opened up the press conference to questions, he was asked about the objectives. What are the objectives of this mission? And the reason why he was asked that, and I do need to play this for you, is because Donald Trump, as you know, has never, not once, addressed the public or the Congress in a live conversation about this war. He has released 2 pre-taped videos. The most recent one was yesterday. He did one Saturday in the middle of the night, our time. So it would have been it was around 11-ish a.m. in Tehran, around 3 in the morning, our time. And he also released one yesterday. I'm going to show you yesterday's because this gets really into this war and how long it might last, because I need to share this with you in order for me to tell you the ever-changing justifications and timeline for this war.
Earlier today, CENTCOM shared the news that 3 U.S. military service members have been killed in action. As one nation, we grieve for the true American patriots who have made the ultimate sacrifice.
He's really having trouble reading what is a script in front of him.
For our nation, even as we continue the righteous mission for which they gave their lives, we pray for the full recovery of the wounded and send our immense love and eternal gratitude to the families of the fallen. And sadly, there will likely be more. Before it ends, that's the way it is. Likely be more. But
that's the way it is. Likely be more. Okay. How about your son Barron going to war? How about Benjamin Netanyahu's son going to war? Like just how it is? Really? Really? Well, Joe Biden's son served. Let's just remember that. This guy, likely be more. Oh, well. I might continue.
we'll do everything possible where that won't be the case. But America will avenge their deaths and deliver the most punishing blow to the terrorists who have waged war against basically civilization. They have waged war against civilization itself. Our resolve.
Okay. And he said, there's more to this. He basically says, I don't know how long it will take. Right. At some point he is asked, it was either in this presentation or in some press interviews, as long as we achieve our objectives, 2 weeks, 4 weeks, what have you. So Pete Hegseth was asked about this morning. And he says, before he's asked in his speech, he says, we will finish this on America's first conditions of President Trump's choosing. Nobody else's, as it should be. Nobody else's, really. Congress has the power under the U.S. Constitution to declare war. So yes, it is somebody else's choosing. Okay, so we get to the Q&A, and Pete is really bad off script. One thing I noticed is he kind of mumbles or stumbles over his words unless he grabs onto a phrase that he may have said over and over again, something he has almost committed to memory. Also, when people push back at him, his voice goes up several notches. It gets very girly and anxious. Okay. Nothing wrong with girls. Of course, I support them, but obviously they hate them. So when his voice gets high like that, I can tell he's out of control. So he was asked specifically about Donald Trump's comments saying, Donald Trump said this could end when the objectives are reached. And so he was asked the question of exactly what are the president's objectives in this war against Iran? And Pete was incapable of answering. I'm not really sure exactly what he said, but it seemed like he was saying he wanted to end their nuclear ambitions. So I don't know exactly the path and how you would know it was ended, like sitting down at the negotiation table where they were. He was also asked, and this is when his voice got really high, would we have boots on the ground? Would we send in our forces? Not just air forces, right? Not just bombing from the sky and hitting girls' schools. No one asked him about the girls' school, of course, unfortunately. His voice got very high and nervous, and it was very unclear what his answer was, right? We get then, they go back and forth with him and General Kane. And at some point, Pete seems more frantic. When he was asked by another journalist about the 4-week timeline, he said, kind of like, didn't you listen to my answer before? And then he said this, and I'm quoting, that's a typical NBC sort of gotcha type question. And he said, President Trump has all the latitude in the world to talk about how long it may or may not take. 4 weeks, 2 weeks, 6 weeks. It could move up, it could move back. Okay, let me apologize. This was the first time he was asked about the 4-week timeline. He didn't say, listen to my answer before. So this is what he says, typical NBC sort of gotcha type question. Trump had said the 4 weeks. Of course, people are asking. And then he actually said, and this is so foolish, that Donald Trump, that there is no better communicator than our president. Really? Donald Trump has not communicated at all live to the American people or at a press conference. He's issued 2 pre-canned videos. Now, Pete was asked again about the danger of this war, which has now been going for almost 60 hours, the danger of this spiraling into a longer war. Pete, this is when he gets angry and says, well, it was a woman who asked him this, didn't you hear my answer before? And then he said, and this is the height of hubris. What a smug fool Pete Hegseth is. He goes, we are very clear-eyed as the president has been, unlike other presidents, about the foolish policies of the past that recklessly pulled us into things that were not tethered to actual clear objectives. Look in the mirror. Look in the mirror. This is not tethered to any clear objectives. Unbelievable. It is astonishing to me also, again, that he says we are attacking with precision. No one asks and no one apologizes about the 175 killed at the girls' school. You heard Donald Trump mention that there had been 3 American military members killed. Apparently, that might be up to 4 service members killed. But in addition, you may have also heard that with our brilliant precision, that there was friendly fire. We shot down 3 of our own planes. The crew members lived because they parachuted out. Take a look at this. Okay, U.S. fighter jet crashes in Kuwait, right? It was geolocated. This is by CNN. Why did it crash? 3 of them did. They crashed because, as I told you, they were shot down by friendly fire. These are not the people who are ready for this kind of engagement. Incompetent. Yes, it worries me. And of course, someone did ask about the danger of retaliation on U.S. soil. They asked about the terrorist attack yesterday in Austin, Texas. And once again, Pete is such a fool. He said, we're ready for that when he was asked about sleeper cells engaging in terrorist attacks domestically. Okay, guys. Now, let's just remember why this Epstein Fury operation is happening. This was Donald Trump in the 80s, what he looked like. And this is what we know. This was in this slide presentation last summer. This is a text directly from the slide presentation last summer. I'll get out of this shot, for which there is an interview that has been redacted with the victim. with her lawyer president and 3 missing FBI interviews. And this survivor stated, and I'm reading the survivor quote, stated Epstein introduced her to Trump, who subsequently forced her head down to his exposed penis when she subsequently bit. The presentation says, in response, Trump punched her in the head and kicked her out. The victim would have been approximately 13 to 15 years old when this occurred, according to the presentation. The alleged assault took place in the early mid-'80s, and the same woman who also claimed to be an Epstein victim. What am I quoting? That was the original Roger Solenberger reporting from a couple weeks ago, and he was excerpting from this presentation. This is what Donald Trump doesn't want us to talk about. Okay, now I want to go back to context. I really think this will be useful for you to understand the long, complex relationship with Iran. For a lot of people in my generation, we might mostly remember in 1979, when there was the revolution, this uprising against the Shah of Iran, and there were 440 days when there are hostages there, and it also in part cost Jimmy Carter the presidency. Now, that is not the beginning of the U.S. engagement with Iran, and so I do think watching this is so good. Ali Velshi, it's quite short, and you will be totally engaged and gripped by this. So let me share this with you. Okay, here we go. And I'm going to put this on right here, and let's play it.
Foreign ministry. But before we get there, we must understand something of the history of the relationship between the United States and Iran. Because Americans and Iranians remember the same history very differently. In fact, I think if you ask 10 Americans to name the most important date in U.S.-Iran relations, most will say 1979. The revolution, the fall of the Shah, the hostage crisis. For Americans, that's where the story begins. But for many Iranians, it begins decades earlier. In fact, you could argue that it begins in 1906. That was the year of Iran's constitutional revolution, when merchants, clerics, and reformers forced the monarchy to accept a constitution and a parliament. It was one of the first constitutional movements in the Middle East. Iranians were experimenting with representative government long before many of its neighbors ever did. But that early experiment unfolded in a country that was being squeezed by the great powers. In 1907, Britain and Russia divided Iran into spheres of influence. Sovereignty was conditional, and its independence was constrained. Then came 1941. During World War II, Britain and the Soviet Union jointly occupied Iran to secure oil supplies and a supply corridor to the Soviet front. Reza Shah was forced to abdicate. His son, Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, took the throne. By mid-century, many Iranians already understood something about their geography. They lived in a strategically vital country, and great powers treated Iran accordingly, which set the stage for 1953. Mohammad Mossadegh was elected the prime minister in 1951. He was secular, nationalist, and widely popular. His central issue, which was the issue of the time, was oil. At the time, the Anglo-Iranian Oil Company, which was controlled by Britain, extracted Iranian oil under terms that many Iranians considered to be exploitative. Around that same period, Saudi Arabia negotiated a 50-50 profit-sharing agreement with American oil companies. The Saudis received half of the profits from their oil production, and Iranians wanted the same deal. Britain said no. London argued that the Anglo-Iranian structure was different and that post-war financial strain, including massive war debts from World War II, limited its flexibility. To Iranians, that sounded like colonial privilege defended by accounting. So Mossadegh nationalized the oil industry. In Britain, that was seen as theft. Iran saw it as sovereignty. Britain imposed sanctions. It sought international legal remedies. And when those efforts failed, British officials pressed Washington to view Mossadegh through a Cold War lens. Iran bordered the Soviet Union. The fear in Washington was not simply oil, but influence. Instability near Moscow's southern border looked very dangerous in 1953 to America. So the CIA agreed to participate in a covert operation. An operative was sent to Tehran. His name was Kermit Roosevelt III. He was the grandson of President Theodore Roosevelt and the cousin of Franklin Delano Roosevelt. He worked with British intelligence. He carried CIA funds to help organize political pressure, propaganda efforts, and street demonstration. The exact amount of money remains debated in historical records, but they were sufficient to mobilize unrest and to influence key actors in Iran. It was called Operation Ajax, and it succeeded. Mossadegh was removed. The Shah returned to full authority. In Washington, it was considered a success of Cold War statecraft. In Iran, it became something else entirely, a defining national trauma, a democratic government overturned with foreign help. For the next 25 years, the Shah ruled as one of America's most important allies. Iran purchased vast quantities of American weaponry. By the 1970s, it was among the largest buyers of U.S. arms in the world. Advanced fighter jets, naval systems, surveillance infrastructure. The relationship was strategic, but it was transactional. Iran bought American arms. The United States treated the Shah as a pillar of regional stability. But political repression deepened. Savak, the Shah's security service, suppressed dissent. Rapid modernization widened social gaps in Iran. Oil enriched some and bypassed most. So when the revolution came in 1979, Americans experienced it as this sudden betrayal. But many Iranians experienced it as the delayed consequence of 1953. It's another important date to remember, 1988. During the final months of the Iran-Iraq War, the USS Vincennes shot down an airplane, Iran Air Flight 655. It was a civilian Airbus on a scheduled route flying over the Persian Gulf. All 290 people aboard were killed. The United States described it as a tragic mistake that happened during a tense naval encounter. And that's largely how it's remembered here, if it's remembered at all. In Iran, it's remembered very differently, as civilian lives lost to an American force, as another chapter that reinforced distrust with America. Now, none of this erases what followed. The hostage crisis was real. Iran's support for militant groups is real. Suppression of dissent in Iran is real. Regional destabilization is real. But history doesn't begin where it's most convenient. The United States and Iran are not separated only by policy or only by ideology. They are separated by memory. Americans remember the moment that Iran turned against America. Iranians remember the moment they believed democracy was taken from them. So each nation sees its actions as a response and the others as aggression. And that's the real danger, not simply hostility, but incompatible origin stories. Because when two countries cannot agree on how their conflict began, they cannot agree on how that conflict will end. History, in this case, is not background. History is, in fact, the battlefield.
Brilliant. History is not background. History is the battlefield. Okay, so where does that bring us? This war has already gotten more complex. What I think you saw is that obviously, even though it appears that the Ayatollah was killed immediately. Oh, let me just back up a little bit here. As you know, after we talked about 1906, right? 1953 with the U.S. and the U.S. CIA, et cetera, helping to overthrow the leader of the democratically, I don't know if he's elected, but the more modern leader of Iran, after he had nationalized the oil industry because he wanted a bigger share of the country's resources. Then we had the Shah of Iran installed by us, right? There is so that happens, right, in 1953. Then we get this revolution in 1979, right? And then you might wonder, what happens next after that? Well, it starts in 1978. It ends around in 1979. That existing Ayatollah has passed away. There is a different supreme leader that was in place, different Ayatollah who was in place up until he was killed on Saturday, right? But plans were obviously in place to retaliate in the event of such an attack. And what we have seen is been utterly shocking. I'm not sure if the U.S. actually planned for this, but as has been reported, and you probably have seen, that Iran has struck all 6 of the Gulf states. And this includes, if you look at a map of the Gulf states, because maybe that would be helpful to you. But if you trust me to know that on the Gulf, we're talking about from sort of the southeast is Oman. Then we have the United Arab Emirates, Qatar, and Bahrain, and Kuwait. Oh, and in between, of course, Saudi Arabia. So Iran is right. I think I can show you. Let's show you a map right here. I'm going to do this because I think it's always more helpful to share what I am looking at here. Let me just share this real quick with you. Okay, so you can see this. Yay. Okay, this is what I'm talking about here. So where you see all the red, all that is obviously sort of to the west of that white body of water is the Gulf. And where you see the words Kuwait, Bahrain, and Qatar written and pointing to countries that are red, that gray area they are upon is Iran, right? So Iran has struck at Oman, United Arab Emirates, and here in the United Arab Emirates includes one of the most well-known cities from the U.S. is Dubai. Dubai is kind of like, it's a tax haven. It's extraordinarily wealthy. It's a place that looks like Beverly Hills. It would be the equivalent of a bomb blowing up a hotel in Beverly Hills, right? Abu Dhabi is also in the UAE. Then we have Qatar, Bahrain, Kuwait, and so you can see Saudi Arabia. They have all been bombed in retaliation, right? In retaliation. And what we have seen is that has, to some degree, changed the view of the Arab states toward Iran. They may have gone to bed on Saturday extremely agitated by what Donald Trump had done, and then wake up the next morning in a posture of defensiveness because they have been bombed. So in addition to those Gulf states I told you about, Iran also hit Jordan, Iraq, and Israel, right? So we have 9 countries, 8 Arab countries and Israel under attack from Iran, who is defending itself. This is a massive war that is just beginning. And this is the kind of thing where we would want Congress to be involved. We have members of Congress, including Senator Ted Cruz, Republican, saying there was, although he wasn't condemning what Donald Trump did, he admitted that there was no evidence that Iran at this point had capability of nuclear weapons, right? So we don't fully understand what was the imminent threat. We shouldn't buy Pete Hegseth saying we didn't start this war. That's completely inconsistent with reality. In other words, a lie. I can't believe I just said inconsistent with reality when I mean it was a lie. Okay, so let me, before we go, share with you 2 things. This is all crazy town, right? I'm going to share with you 2 videos. First, let's play our crazy town music, guys. We deserve it. And yes, my humor at times like this is dark. And I will continue to laugh because that helps me. That honestly helps me get through these extremely, extremely difficult moments, right? And let me just say to you, probably like you may know people who are directly affected by this. I literally, the minute I happened to wake up in the middle of the night, right when the bombing started, shortly after we learned about the bombing. And so I immediately checked in with 2 friends. I have a friend who is in Israel and was in a bomb shelter. I have another friend who's in Jordan, and there are no bomb shelters there. And I'm communicating with both of them. And I will tell you, laughing helps them. Of course, this is incredibly serious. So this is one thing. Let me first share this. With you, right? This is, as you know, Donald Trump is or was in Mar-a-Lago at his private social club in something that was not a secure area, just a like curtain around some kind of space when he announced, he does this video and they release photos when he announces that we are at war, right? And it's kind of what I would call crazy. So this is my favorite thing. This was put up on Twitter or Blue Sky, and it says, if you can see the photo, there's someone peeking in a curtain that he has wrapped around the space. You've got Marco Rubio at the table. I'm not sure who is across there from him, some guard. And then you have this quote, satire, my friends. Mr. President, the bombings have begun in Tehran, and also customers are complaining we have run out of shrimp at the pool buffet. What a joke. What a joke these people are. Okay, so let me share with you first from 2011, 15 years ago, when Donald Trump had ambitions about displacing Barack Obama at the midterm election. He wanted to become president. He was thinking about it back then. And here is him talking about striking Iran.
Our president will start a war with Iran because he has absolutely no ability to negotiate. He's weak and he's ineffective. So the only way he figures that he's going to get reelected, and as sure as you're sitting there, is to start a war with Iran. Now, I'm more militant and more militaristic than the president. I believe in strength. But to start a war in order to get elected, and I believe that's going to happen, would be an outrage. Iran can be taken down in many ways. Their population is in turmoil. They look at what's happening in Syria and other.
Okay. You heard what he said 15 years ago, that Obama would try to do this to get reelected. Let's now pivot, and this is crazy town too, to the pre-recorded message where Donald Trump is wearing a white hat that obscures baseball cap, because maybe he hasn't brushed his hair or coiffed it, that obscures his eyes, right? And it obscures his eyes. And what do we see here? Donald Trump starting the war that he condemned.
Time ago, the United States military began major combat operations in Iran. Our objective is to defend the American people by eliminating imminent threats from the Iranian regime, a vicious group of very hard, terrible people. Its menacing activities directly endanger the United States, our troops, our bases overseas.
Okay, I don't want to listen to him. Here's what I know. As I said to you when we began, this is Operation Epstein Fury. Look closely at his pupils, my friends. Jeff Epstein is on his mind. This is the Epstein class that either rapes girls or kills them. No acknowledgement of the 175 girls and teachers who were killed. No apology. I'm not going to hold my breath, but until my last breath on this planet, I will never, ever stop fighting and speaking out for a world that is just and supportive and believes in shared prosperity, human flourishing, and the rights of children. And with that, I bid you adieu, and I'll see you tomorrow morning.
Hello, prison mates. It's the Gen Taub Show. Well, welcome everyone. Let's learn about what is happening in politics yesterday and today. There was hope, and we are together in this democracy we work for. And again, welcome to the Gen Taub Show. Hello, prison mates. It's the Gen Taub Show. Well, welcome everyone. Let's learn about what is happening in politics yesterday and today. There was hope, and we are together in this democracy we work for. And again, welcome to the Gen Taub Show.